So this here is going to be a painting video for a Chief Librarian, which we did up an Alpha Legion. We trimmed off all of the Space Marine iconography, and we replaced a lot of it with just generic iconography. So we could make a Space Marine librarian that can work with pretty much any chapter. If you like this video, please feel free to leave a like or a comment. And otherwise than that, stay tuned and we'll show you the painting video now. So this is our painting video for our Chief Librarian. So what we've got here is the model for the Chief Librarian Tigurius. But then what we did was we removed all of the Ultramarine logos. So that allows us to use them for pretty much any chapter as a straight up librarian. So we took off the Ultramarine logo here. We took the one off the staff and replaced it with just a little coin symbol, scraped off the one on the knee, as well as the one on the shoulder pad. So we removed most of those. He's also sub-assembled, so he's not attached to the base. That way we can access all of the cloaks and things like that underneath. As well, the backpack isn't attached. We're probably going to take that banner off and then just have it as just a normal Space Marine librarian. So we may just do that. What we did was we base coated him with Leadbelcher spray just to get at the armor we wanted, but we're going to have to paint all of the cloaks first before we do any of the armor anyway. So now the first thing we're going to do with our librarian, now that we base coated him with Leadbelcher, is we're going to start with the cloaks, of which we're going to take some Rakarth flesh and just do the interior of the cloaks there now. So with a nice watered down layer of Rakarth flesh, we'll just come across and just coat all of our inside of the cloak to get a good layer on. It looks thick, but it's very, very watered down. So we'll probably use 2 coats in the end of it. But we will do them now. We'll be back here in a few minutes once that's done. So this is our Chief Librarian now that the Rakarth flesh is done. We also took the time to do the cloths on the front, as well as some of these Oath of Moment. So with all of that done, we're ready for a shade. And what we're going to do for our shade is we're going to take a little bit of Seraphim Sepia, and we're just going to lightly put it all over all these cloths, and that'll give us our depth effect. So we'll just put that Seraphim Sepia all over. And we'll probably do 2 coats just to make sure we get what we need. But we want it to pool in the recesses there, just like so. And drive some of it down here into these folds behind his legs. So we'll do that now and be back in a few minutes once that's finished drying. So this is our Chief Librarian now that we finished with the cloaks. So as you can see, the Seraphim Sepia has all dried in the grooves. So what we're going to do now is add our highlight layer of Ushabti bone. And what we're going to do with that, a nice dry brush here. Make sure our brush is unloaded as best we can, and then just lightly brush it across these areas here. And we'll do a bit of a heavy dry brush, but we're going to do it with a bunch of small dry layers, building those up on the cloak that he's got here, as well as on the back cape. So we'll do those now and be back in a few minutes when it's done. So this is our Chief Librarian now that we finished with the Ushabti bone. And as you can see, we lit it up quite nicely. It's not nearly as dark and faded as it was a minute ago. So what we're going to do now is take a little bit of Screaming Skull, which is a little brighter still. And we're just going to go over some of these very, very high points. And we're going to use a very, very light dry brush. So not much paint on it at all, as you can see. And just come by and just tap these high points here. just like so, just to blend it in a little bit there. So this is our head librarian now, now that we're finished with the inside of the cloak. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do the armor so we can fix him to the base before we start doing the outside of the cloak, because we don't want our fingers to mess up all the paint job. So we do want to fix him to the base that we can use the painting stand for. So because we've still got him off the base, we can do the inside legs and things like that. So that's what we're going to do now. Now we're doing him Alpha Legion, so we've done several videos before on how to do the armor, and I'll link some of them in the description down below, as well as tag one here. But effectively, what we're going to do is a little bit of Runefang steel dry brushed over all of the armor. And then we're going to add Akhelian green. And then we're going to add a light layer of warped lightning over the top of that, just to get our green shade. And then we'll have our Alpha Legion armor finished. So we'll just join it back up here when we're done. And then we'll go on to the further librarian details. And like I said, we'll link above to a painting video on how to do the armor, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. So our model's coming on okay. The only problem is we've splashed a little bit on the capes and the robes. So we'll come back and touch that up in a minute. But before we do that, we'll finish off the inside of the legs, which we'll do with some Abaddon black, just to get the joints on the inside there, as well as the elbows and any other area where the underlying bodysuit is visible. So we'll do that now and meet back here again in a few minutes. So before we connect glue Tigurius here, or our librarian, to the base, what we're going to do now is just finish off the armor. So we're going to take a little bit of Stormhost silver, and we're going to do all of the trim, so along the knee here, and in the chest piece, and anywhere else that we see any trim we want to do. And we'll do that because we still have access to the legs here before we glue it down on the base. So we'll do that now and be back in a few minutes. So this is our Chief Librarian now that we finished with all of our trim. And we did the top of the model here, as well as the aguilas in the front, the lightning there, the other ram's head on the shoulder pauldron, the other one on the other side. So with that, we're going to move on to the back end of the cloak here. So with that, we're going to make it that regal captain's color. So we'll use some Khorne Red, and give it a nice base coat. May even use 2 coats. And just start spreading it on like so. So for our librarian coat, this is what it looks like here once we finish with the Khorne Red. So what we're going to do now is take some Evil Sunz Scarlet and just sort of build up the high points of each of those folds. And all we're going to do is just very gently add some color to each of these peaks. Like that. Clean off our brush a bit. And then blend those in. So similar to that. See how we're building up a nice ridge? So we'll keep doing this, and we'll meet back here in a few minutes. We'll probably also mount him to his base at this point. Because we're pretty much finished dealing with the inside of the legs there now. So we'll do that, and we'll meet back here in a few minutes. So this is our Chief Librarian model now that we've finished with the cape. And as you can see, we've got a nice two-tone appearance here. Now we could have united it again with some Carroberg Crimson, but we felt we didn't have to. We're going to leave it just the way it is there now because I do like the way it looks. So with that, we're going to move on to our next color, and that's going to be We're going to deal with these belts here on his waist, as well as this holster for this gun here, as well as the staff handle here as well. So we're going to do all that with a leather type approach. So we're going to take a little bit of Rhinox hide, followed by a little bit of Skrag brown, and that'll create a nice two-tone leathery look. So we'll do those now and meet back here again once those little things are finished there. So here's our librarian now that we finished with the brown. And as you can see, we did just the belt and then the staff. That's pretty much it for the moment. But what we are going to do next is take some Retributor armor and start going over, say, the sides of this canister cylinder here, this belt buckle, some of the top parts of the staff, and any other little details that we want to bring out. So we'll do that now with some gold, and we'll be back in a few minutes. So this here's our Chief Librarian now that we finished with our Retributor armor. And there wasn't a whole lot to do. We did the skull as well as the extra piece we added here. And then we did the tail end part of the staff and the belt buckle, and then the cylinder here that holds the oaths of moment here that we've got signed, that you swear before you go into battle. So we've done all that stuff with Retributor armor. And what we're going to do from there is just shade it just to bring out some more of the detail, especially on the skull and things like that. So we'll do that with some Agrax Earthshade. Probably run a little bit through the post here as well. It's not going to show up as much. And we are going to come back and dry brush a different color over all these little lightning strands here. We'll do that after. So we'll do all that now and be back in a few minutes once all that's done. So back to our Chief Librarian now that we finished with the Agrax Earthshade. And as you can see, we've filled in the skull eyes and the other set of eyes and all the details on all of this gold trim and all these locations. So what we're going to do now is add one more highlight layer of Liberator Gold. And we're just going to dry brush that right over those designs, just to brighten them back up and make them a bit more eye-catching. So we'll do that for all of these trinkets, belt buckles, making sure we're always brushing from the top where the light source is. And we'll finish this up. Be back here again in a few minutes once that's done. So now we're finished with the gold. We're going to move on to the other metallics. So that's all of this power inverter type thing for the staff, as well as these some of these coils that are here. There's some power cords here, some that are going into the head. And then on the backpack, you've got some more coils and wires here. On the backpack, you have the traditional vents and things like that are there. So we're going to do all those with your classical colors for that. We're going to clean them up with Leadbelcher. We're going to do a wash of Nuln oil on them, and then do a highlight layer of Ironbreaker. And we've done that in every video so far, so we'll do it again here, and we'll get that all cleaned up, and then we'll move on to one of our last colors for our model. So one of the next things we're going to do is the middle cable here. On the box art, it's yellow, so I think we're going to do the same thing, just add a bit more color to the model. So we'll do that now. So in order to do yellow, we'll do it very similar to, say, a Imperial Fist. So we'll probably take a little bit of Averland Sunset as a base, and then we'll probably build up a little bit to a Uriel Yellow. And then leave the Averland Sunset fill the grooves in there, and then just dry brush the yellow over the top. So we'll probably try some of that now, and then meet back in the end after we see what it looks like. While we're working on our librarian, the other thing we're going to hit is the laurel up here. It's generally made of leaves and such. So we're going to do it green. So we'll probably throw a base coat of, say, a Death Guard green. We'll probably do a shade of an Athonian camo shade, but pretty much any shades of green you have lying around. And we'll probably take a Nurgling green overcoat highlight layer on it, just to bring it up a little brighter. So we'll do both the Laurel and the cables, and be back here in a few minutes when we deal with a few more details. So this here's our librarian now that we've finished with the laurels as well as the yellow cables. So what we're going to do now is just finish the face. So the first thing we're going to do with that is add a base coat. And we're going to use some Rakarth flesh for that. And then once that's dried, we will add a shade. And we'll use some Reikland flesh shade. So we'll do that now. And just do in the face here nice and lightly so we can get some coverage there. And then we'll be back here in a few minutes once both the base coat and the shade are finished. So our Chief Librarian is looking pretty good. What we're going to do now is add a dry brush over the top of the Reikland flesh shade of Cadian flesh tone. And as you can see, that'll bring out and light up some of the higher points and blend it in a little better. Then we're going to take another shade. We're going to do Kaisa flesh over the top of that. And as you can see, they're slightly different colors, one brighter than the other. Both of them together will add the highlights that'll finish off the face. So we'll be back here in a few minutes once those are done. So here's our librarian now that the skin tones are finished. So all we're going to do to finish off the face is a couple of shades. So we're going to take a little bit of Nuln oil and put that into each of the eye sockets here, just to add a little bit more texture. And we're going to take a little bit of Carroberg Crimson and put it in the mouth, just to see if we can bring that out as well. And then we'll be back here in a few minutes. So these are our faces now that we've finished with them. And as you can see, the Carroberg Crimson landed right where we wanted in the mouth. And the Nuln oil landed very well in the eyes to give us exactly the detail that we wanted for highlighting those parts of the face. So with that finished, our model's almost done, but we have neglected to do these wax seals that are here. So we'll do those now. There's 1, 2, 3 there, plus one up on the staff. So we'll do those now, and those are going to take 2 different colors. We're going to start with a base of Screamer Pink, followed by a highlight layer of Pink Horror, and both of those will go on each of the seals just to bring out the detail. And then we'll be back here in a moment. So here's our Chief Librarian now that we're finished with the wax seals, and as you can see, they stand out quite nicely, as well as the one up on the staff here. So with that, our model's pretty much done. We're going to color in these 2 little lights here. We're going to do some of these wires here. There's another little gemstone there that we're going to do. So we'll do a bunch of these little tiny details around the model. Then we're going to clear coat it and protect it. And then we'll probably meet back here in a few minutes so you can see the final product. So with that, we'll be back, but we'll see you in a few minutes. So this here is our Chief Librarian now that we finished with them. And as you can see, we clear coated him and we just touched up a few of the other spots like we mentioned. So if you think he looks good and you want to paint one up similar to this, then leave a like or a comment on the channel. If you want to see other videos similar to this, please feel free to subscribe. And otherwise than that, stay tuned. We'll show you a few extra angles on the model, just so you can get an idea of how it looks. And otherwise than that, we'll see you in our next painting video. You guys have a pleasant day.